Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal-Based Dad podcast. This is the show where between my guest interviews with subject matter experts and topic-specific deep dives, the aim is to arm you with actionable insights and information on how to prioritize your metabolic health and improve your overall health and well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal-Based Dad podcast. I'm your host, Ricky Duplessis. My guest today is a man who I first came across several years ago and is one of the first people that I ever heard talk about mobility. And though I was much younger then, as I've aged and as I've watched his content, I've started to grow an appreciation for the importance of working on your mobility as part of your physical health regime. And so I thought it'd be brilliant to have him on the podcast to have an episode where we discuss the intricacies and nuances of mobility training and how this impacts metabolic health. Mr. Toby Swallow, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much, Ricky, and really appreciate you having me on today. Pleasure.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. So, Toby, I wonder if you can just give the viewers a brief introduction of yourself, where you've come from, what you do, and what your sort of particular niche is in the space.
Yeah, sure. So I work with predominantly middle-aged men. These are guys largely in their 40s and 50s and some in their 60s as well, to promote pain-free strength, fitness, and mobility. And it's about training smarter, but it's not just training. It's very much taking a much broader look at health, because we can take one aspect of fitness and you can look at a specific routine. It's never about the routine. It's about everything else that goes on in life that largely determines the outcome of that routine that you're doing, assuming that you do it in the first place.
Yeah.
And one thing for me, mobility is a gateway. And what I mean by that is it's creating this awareness of aches and pains and how we move, because we all assume that we're okay as we age. And I know you're fast approaching 40, Ricky.
Yes.
And things do change. Tissues stiffen. We have an accumulation of injuries, whether that be from just general messing around as kids, that kind of catches up with you. It might be from pursuing exercise or sport. It might even be because you've had, unfortunately, a car accident 15 years ago. Lots of things. But also, as well, as you kind of hit your 40s, you've probably amassed around 50,000 hours worth of sitting hours up to this point in your adult life, and that's huge. And that impacts how we move. And so I post videos on LinkedIn at the weekends in terms of movement standards, movement tests. They're not strength tests, because it's to draw attention to, look, can you stand on one leg and put your shoe and sock on without falling over, without wobbling? Because if you're 50 and you can't do that now, the fuck do you think you're going to be like when you're 75? Yeah. That if you can't sit cross-legged on the floor, when was the last time that most guys in their 40s or 50s sat cross-legged? It's possibly in assembly in school for 15 to 30 minutes, but we've never really done that since. You might be able to do that now for 2 minutes before it becomes uncomfortable, but we should be able to do that.
Yeah.
We should be able to sit in a full squat, a relaxed full squat, for a length of time. As humans, we've evolved to prepare food, skin an animal. It might be to defecate. It might be to socialize. It might be to rest. And we see some populations around the world that still do that. But in the West, because we're so advanced, we now use chairs. It's not that, but we've actually almost devolved. It's not that we can't. You could when you were a young child. You're just not used to doing that. And so I've actually come from working in a care home industry. And this is where my passion for mobility has arisen, in the fact that if we put aside palliative care, people who are end of life, if we put aside dementias, most people come in because they don't have the strength, balance, mobility to look after themselves independently. This is about being able to put your own pants and socks on. Yes. This is about being able to get in and out of the bath without falling over. This is about
Mm.
being able to step out of your own front door and walk down the street to go and do your shopping and carry it back confidently without fear of tripping up over a raised paving slab. Because when we
Yeah.
do, we now sue the bloody council. What absolute nonsense. And this deterioration is not directly down to aging. It's largely because we've just not used it as it's meant to.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you thanks to my work as a Zinzino independent partner. To find out more about Zinzino's product offering within test-based personalized nutrition, or to find out about how to join as an independent partner yourself and build a revenue stream in helping others take the guesswork out of their personal health journeys, please stay tuned because I'll be sharing information later in this episode.
Yes, but it's so common, we say, oh, that's natural. Now, it's not that our bodies don't change as we age. They do. We do get slower. We do lose muscle mass. Our metabolism does change in the sixth, seventh decade. Yes. And I know you want to talk about metabolic health. So that middle-age spread is not a real thing. It's just you're less active and you're eating more crap. You're possibly having a few beers in the evening and eating more food and less active, that we develop the moobs and the belly as men.
100%.
And so these people in the care homes coming in requiring support because they can't get to the toilet quick enough. For men, we don't take well to sanitary products.
No, I can imagine that's quite a bruise on the ego, that.
Yeah. And then to soil yourself as an 80-year-old man because you can't get to the toilet, you need somebody to help you off the toilet.
Yeah.
We all think it's not going to happen to us, yet there are 500,000 people living in care homes around the UK that need that support. There are over 2 million people over the age of 65 requiring care at home, and that number is set to double by the year 2040.
That's actually a scary age, 65, right? 65. And it may be like, I'll rewind a bit here, because when I was in my teens and 20s, 65 was over the hill. And it seemed like that at that stage in life, you can't distinguish and appreciate the difference between a 65-year-old and an 85-year-old. They're all in the same category. They're just old. But the closer you get to 40, the more you start to realize that 65 is not actually that old yet. Like, you should still be quite functional.
How quickly have the last 20 years gone for you?
Oh, it's insane. It's like I finished school and every year goes faster and faster and faster. The fact that it's nearly the end of February 2025 at the moment is mind-blowing, because Christmas was 2 weeks ago.
Yep. And it's all these things that they do change over time, and we do get slower, but that deterioration, we are seeing a speed up in modern Western living, particularly amongst men. Because men in our head, we don't like to admit weakness. Yes.
Yeah.
We don't like to admit that we don't know what we don't know, or that we can't do something. We look around our contemporaries. We look for the fattest, the weakest, the unhealthiest, and go, I'm not that bad.
Yeah.
I'm all right as I am. We need to bring back standards. I'm a huge fan of standards. And regardless of the industry that you're in, there are standards everywhere. We're governed by standards in life. The pane of glass that I have on my French doors has a little kind of etching for some sort of standard. We've got food standards, we've got driving standards, we've got industry regulatory standards. Yes, there are standards with fitness and with health. But we're at a point now whereby there is a gap between elite athletes and your average man. Even though they exercise, that gap is growing.
Huge.
And it's not because elite athletes are getting better. If you look at the 100-meter world record times, Usain Bolt was very much an anomaly, even in elite sport.
It was a bit of a unicorn,
time significantly, but it's gradually come down by a tenth of a second, by a thousandth of a second over decades. So we're at the point now across most established sports of we're almost reaching, the consensus is, the physical extent of human capability. We're starting to change weight classes as well for lots of variety of reasons to mix things up a little bit. But the average man is becoming unfitter, fatter, weaker, slower, less mobile. And fitness has become, I call it a form of entertainment.
Yeah.
We do it when we have time. We chase the endorphin rush, the dopamine hit. We think because we're doing something that makes me fit, but that's no different from turning up at work and saying, well, I'm good at my job because I turn up. Well,
Yeah. We
congratulations.
tend to do the bare minimum.
You've actually got to do the work and more to a high standard to be a high performer. And so we need to reintroduce standards. So movement standards for me are a way to say, hey, look, I don't care if you can squat 300 kilos. Can you sit on the floor cross-legged? Can you put your own pants and socks on? Can you scratch that itch in the middle of your back? Because if you can't do it now, you're not going to be able to in 20, 30 years' time. And part of my background, how I came to this is I'm a former world champion powerlifter. So I've been super strong. I've coached world champions and national champions. There's a lot of talk around muscle, and this kind of leads into metabolic health. Well, we know muscle by itself is not that the message is very mixed. Muscle is we can view it as a health organ, if you like. It will absorb carbohydrates, glycogen, basically. Yes. And it is important for metabolic health and also our mental health as well. But you can be very big and not be strong. You can be big and strong and not mobile. And we confuse them as all being the same. So my background coming from a strength sport, how you train for strength is very different from how you train for hypertrophy, for muscle size.
100%. Yeah.
But we think they're for the average gym goer, most of the knowledge on gym training comes from the world of bodybuilding because it's simple to understand. But we think it's the same. And then we think being strong is the same as being powerful.
Yeah. And they're not.
They're entirely different. We lose strength quicker than we lose muscle mass. We lose power at twice the rate of strength. We lose speed at 4 times the speed or 4 times the rate of strength. So you go to the gym and you're curling, doing your lateral raises, what have you. Great. Where's your power? And so even down to I talk about sprinting and being able to jump. These are life skills, and we evolved. We needed to jump out the way of a threat. That might be a lion, a tiger, saber-toothed tiger, what have you. We needed to be able to jump rocks, climb, roll. We needed to sprint to chase down our prey and throw a spear or something. So we don't do that now. So exercise is a modern invention. We're trying to keep up our physicality, but coming back to this entertainment piece, we're doing it for chasing feelings rather than improvement.
Or even just the aesthetics. Like so many guys chase the aesthetics.
Most of us come into exercise, I want to look better. That's important for our self-image, our self-esteem. We've all got an ego. And you can actually look at, I think, again, and I'm not knocking bodybuilders, but bodybuilders are incredible athletes, incredibly dedicated. The hardest part of what they do is the dieting. They probably go through more sufferance than any other athlete from a diet perspective, I think. Whereas we can look at powerlifters. Most powerlifters, certainly in the UK, historically have been fat, and it's an excuse to train, but I don't want to apply any control over the food. There are exceptions, and that image is now changing. But if we train for movement, so to become stronger and powerful, we will grow more muscle.
Absolutely.
So we see examples of, I'll come back to 100-meter sprinters in the Olympics, probably regarded as the most muscular and physically impressive physiques out of all of the athletes. They've got an average, the Rio 2016 Olympics, their average BMI was between 22 and 24. So that's slap bang in the middle of healthy, but you're talking really low body fat levels, really low body
a lot of
fat.
muscle
So these guys weren't that big, but it just makes them look big. but they don't use bodybuilding methods. They
Yeah.
use strength and power, speed methods to develop the physique. So they're not there curling and doing their lateral raises.
No.
So my encouragement is, let's move our body how it's intended to maintain the ranges. And I've been down the route of chasing performance in my teens, my 20s, and large part of my 30s, but I kind of broke myself doing it.
Mm.
So I got to the point, I was 31, found myself on the floor on my back in my living room, and I was a bit like a turtle on its back. I couldn't get up.
Yeah.
I was eating ibuprofen to manage pain. But when you're young, you wear injuries as a badge of honor. And it was a defining moment for me, thinking like, fuck, if I'm like this now, what am I going to be like when I'm old? 40.
Yeah.
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 And I became a father just before I turned 40 as well. That changes all of us. But I knew then, look, this is now about my health span, because I'm an old
That's
dad.
actually, sorry, don't mean to interrupt you there. You've said something profound, and I'd like you just to explain. You've not said lifespan, you've said health span. Can you just explain the difference between the two?
So we all think about lifespan, whether you live to 80, 90, 100, what have you. But we do know that people are actually, how old we live has kind of stagnated.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference is our health span, our quality of life is actually decreasing. And there's a turning point around 64. Where we've become more reliant on medication because we're seeing more cardiovascular related diseases. We're seeing an awful lot of musculoskeletal disorders as well. And this is largely down to lifestyle. So it's not that I want to live till I'm 100. No, I want to lead the highest quality of life independently as I can, because I'm 50, my daughter's 10. I'm going to be 60 when she brings a boyfriend home, and he's going to shake my hand. And I don't want him looking at me like I'm a frail old man, because I'm a small guy. Yeah. I don't want him looking at me like I can do what the hell I like with your daughter and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Rather, I want him to look me in the eye as he shakes my hand and go, fuck, your grip is not someone I want to mess around with.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that when I'm 80, I can still get in and out of the bath by myself without a fear of falling.
Yeah.
Because at 65, we have a 1 in 3 chance. At 65, 1 in 3 over 65s will fall every year. Your risk of hip fracture increases. If you fracture your hip after the age of 65, and I've seen this in the care home sector, it is the beginning of the end.
Yeah. Yeah,
You're laid up, you're in bed, you atrophize, you become weaker, you'll never get that back. Okay. At the age of 80, you have a 50% chance of falling. And even if that hip is surgically fractured, the 1 year mortality rate is horrendous.
Yeah.
So it's not just about muscular strength and muscular size, it's also about bone density, it's about tendon health. It's about, we know that exercise, both strength training and also aerobic training, has an impact on the brain. So this is about maintaining our faculties. This leads into as well metabolic health, because it's about having a good metabolic health and good insulin sensitivity to protect both body and brain.
Yeah.
So for me, health span is, look, I still want to be climbing. I still want to be crawling, getting down on the floor when I'm 80. It's not just about doing the crazy stuff, but I also don't want somebody to come in and wipe my own backside when I've had a crap on the toilet.
Yeah.
And 64 is an age, as I mentioned now, where we're seeing life quality deteriorates, particularly for men. Women fare better, but men, we've got it in our head, I'm not that bad, or belly, that's bought and paid for.
Yeah.
Yeah, we take the piss out of each other, and it's all humorous. Yes, I had a conversation. I was in Tenerife last week, and some guy kind of swam up to me as I'm poolside playing with my daughter. I'm sat on the side minding my own business, and he goes, "Oh, I don't think I'm too bad for my age." and he pats his belly. I went, really? So how old are you? Oh, I'm 50.
No.
I'm the same age as you, mate. And he kind of looked at me and I went, when
Yeah,
was the last time you saw your dick? Because he had a big belly.
yeah.
That's a bit rude, isn't it? I went, no, it's an honest conversation. You look down and you can't see anything.
Yeah.
But it's so common, we see it as normal.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're almost
Yeah.
expected to sort of play along with the jovial banter about it and not have a frank conversation that like you're probably 2 to 3 years away from a serious medical incident, mate. Like
If he's not on cholesterol
yeah.
medication, blood pressure medication,
Mm,
type 2 medication, or pre-diabetic at the moment,
yeah.
yes. And coming back to standards, Ricky, coming from a strength world, if you've been involved in lifting weights in the gym, you'll know that squatting 2 times your own body weight, deadlifting 2.5 times your body weight, a ten a penny,
Mhm.
10 a penny. Nobody's going to bat an eyelid, but we're now at the point where people are calling those elite standards,
Yeah, no.
and they're not.
I've got a funny story for you, and I think you'll have an appreciation for this because you and I have had discussions in the past. I don't know how well you remember them, but it's part and parcel of what got me to start paying more and more attention to mobility. But I used to, in the gym I'm sat in at the moment, I used to train in the free weight section. It was every morning at the time. My daughter was young and I was coming in the mornings. That's what worked with the routine. And I'd come and I'd do my normal free weight, sort of bodybuilding-esque type workouts. And across the room from me, there's an open space they call a Queen Axe room. That's got monkey bars and an open space for some TRX type workouts and things like that. And there's a young couple that would work out in there, both in very, very good shape, guy and a girl. And I'd watch them, but the ego would be taking over. And I'd think like, look at you doing your push-ups and your squats and stuff like that. Like, come and grab a free weight and let's see how strong you really are, blah, 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 blah. And this carried on for months. And one day I went over and I asked the guy, so why do you only train in there? Why don't you come and like touch any free weights? And he didn't answer the question. Instead, he invited me to come and train with him the next morning. And I thought, yeah, okay, fair enough. Like I'll come train with you. Let's do one of your little body weight sessions, and then you come train with me, and then I'll show you. Basically, is what was going on in the back of my head. So I show up the next morning, and I embarrass the shit out of myself because I've never been so exposed for how weak and immobile I was. I couldn't keep up. I couldn't do the stuff that they were doing. I didn't have the balance. I didn't have the coordination, and I didn't have the strength. Body weight pull-ups. I had no clue how hard a body weight pull-up was. A proper strict form body weight pull-up. I couldn't do it. They had to get the bands out to help me. And it destroyed my ego badly. But I'm so glad that it happened because I haven't been back to the free weight since.
It's one of those things that something it can either make you realize and go, oh shit, I need to do something about this, or you kind of bury your head in the sand. And unfortunately, I think most men bury their head in the sand and we make excuses and the justification for not doing something. I think looking at a squat, because it's an innate human movement,
Mm-hmm.
is a great example. And as we age, and I've been training now 39 years, I've been around gyms that long, up and down the country and around the world as well. So in powerlifting, you have a standard how deep that squat needs to be to pass and satisfy 3 referees. But as we get older and maybe our knees start to ache and become a bit dodgy, iffy hip, we start to work around these things. Yes.
Yeah.
So instead of squatting deep, if this is the hip and this is the knee, instead of squatting deep, we start cutting
Yeah.
the rep. Yes, cutting the
Yeah.
depth. And we start piling the weight on, going, yeah, I'm really strong. I still squat. But when we see middle-aged guys now doing third squats, not even half
Yeah.
squats, and actually they'd be better off saying, looking at, well, why can't I squat all the way down? Yes, this is the use of an assessment, because we can then go down a rabbit hole to determine what the sticking points are, what areas do we need
Yeah.
to develop. But as men, unfortunately, we think, I can't do that, therefore it can't be done.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
yeah.
That's why we have experts. You're in your job, you're an expert at what you do. We have accountants, we have solicitors, financial planners, we have mechanics to take our cars to. But when it comes to fitness, we kind of think, I know what I'm doing.
Mm.
And it's almost this point where in the first 5 years of doing something new, you take up training, doesn't matter at your age, you take it up for the first time. Those first 5 years, those beginner gains, you can make amazing gains. And all you've got to do is turn up, train reasonably hard, and be consistent.
Yeah.
And you'll experience amazing results, whether you run, cycle, row, lift weights, doesn't matter. Yes.
Yeah.
You can get it all pretty much wrong, but still make amazing gains.
Yeah,
After 5
compared
years,
to the opposite of being completely sedentary and doing nothing, 100%.
yeah, absolutely. And then we start to add in intensity methods, yes, to train a little bit harder. And then we get to the point where I know what I'm doing. But we actually see a point between years 8 and 12 where guys kind of hit a wall, particularly around gym training. Yeah. I've reached my genetic potential. I can't get any more. Maybe I'm getting injured. And they usually turn to turn to PED use. Okay.
Yeah.
And because what they've effectively run out of is their knowledge.
Yeah.
So it's about methods and systems that we need it's about systems and models rather than methods. But in bodybuilding, methods are common. Yeah, whether you use supersets, drop sets, trisets, strip sets, whatever it might be. But how does that fit into a model or a system? And so as a powerlifter, I'm got pretty narrow clavicles. I'm pretty shallow in the rib cage, and I'm a good deadlifter. So my arm length was too long to be a good bench press. So you go to the worlds and you've got guys at 75 kilos benching 230 kilos. That's an extraordinary amount of weight. And for me, the bench lagged behind, and I had to bench 6 days a week to bring my bench up. And even then, I was benching 180 in competition. So I was still being outbenched by the top benchers at an international level, by 50 kilos, which is a huge amount. But at no point did I say, it's my genetics, it's my leverages that stop me. It was, I need to find a way to bring that up. So if you're bench pressing 6 days a week, that gets boring pretty quickly. It comes down to systems, and it comes down to the models, not the methods, to bring that up, because all of a sudden it's now about load management. Whereas in bodybuilding, that's overtraining, because it's not an optimal way to grow a muscle. I wasn't trying to grow the muscle. I'm looking to develop strength.
Yes.
And you do about 350 working sets over the course of the week. It's how do you manage that to progress? It works. But you do that for 5 or 10 years. It's boring, but it's very effective.
Yeah.
Whereas now we see guys, well, I need intensity methods. I want to max out, and I've stagnated, so I need a deload every 4 weeks so I don't get injured or go stale. That just tells me that you have no idea how to train. You've no idea in terms of exercise selection. You've no idea how to manage that progress and coax it. And I think when you're in your 20s and 30s, it's very easy to kind of force progress.
Yeah.
But in your 40s, 50s, and beyond, we carry more stress. That's possibly going through a divorce, relationship issues. Growing children is very stressful. As delightful as they are, they're also stressful. Finances, maybe you're employed and there's a threat of redundancy. Maybe you've been made redundant, second career. You've possibly got aging parents with their own health problems. So lots of different stresses, and one stress, so going to smash some gym training, whatever kind of training you're doing, doesn't cancel out the other stress that you're experiencing, because training is a stress. Whilst you might feel good, I'm alexithymic, so I don't experience the endorphin rush. Yes, I have no sensation.
That's interesting.
Of that. And so chasing feelings is actually just entertainment. I'm training to feel good. Well, it doesn't mean to say that was a productive session.
Yeah.
You might have released that stress, but actually, I'm sure walking would have done the same.
Yeah, true.
But guys think they need to do something hard. So we then go home, we've had a hard session, we think, I deserve that beer. I deserve that takeaway. I deserve to eat that 24-inch pizza or whatever it might be. Yeah. And then we think, I've got this belly and these man boobs. I just need to train harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, surprisingly, people don't put those two together. I used to be exactly the same. If we rewind to early 2018, I was active. I was training 5-6 days a week, lifting big weights for my size. I'm not the biggest guy in the world. I'm 5'7".
We're the same height.
But I was getting fatter and fatter and fatter. I looked like a rugby prop, like an old school club rugby prop. I was just getting rounder. I was strong. I could run 5Ks, but I was getting rounder and rounder and rounder. And I was starting to experience some other issues as well, cognitive issues. And things weren't going well. There were lots of alarm signs. And I came to the realization that I wasn't able to out-exercise my bad diet anymore. No. Like I needed to fix things because they all interlap. And that's probably a good segue just for the audience to explain why I think mobility training and the stuff that you do is so important towards metabolic health. People love to silo things and keep them all in separate boxes. But I think that human physiology, if we're going back to your point on health span, the human body and our physiology and the way it's meant to work, we're meant to be sharp, functional, like perfectly capable well into old age. Like in my opinion, you should be almost indistinguishable from the prime of your life through to at least your 80s. And then at some point, something's going to happen. Then your health will fall off the cliff and then you're going to die. It shouldn't be this long, slow deterioration over decades like that. That is fundamentally at odds with human physiology. Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're looking after your physiology from that health span's perspective and wanting to make sure that your health span is as high as possible for as long as possible across your lifespan, then you need to appreciate that it's not just diet. It's not just exercise. It's not just sleep. It's not just light exposure. It's not just grounding. Those are the 5 fundamentals that in my research I've come to settle on. It's all of them because they all have intrinsic, that they all work intrinsically to trigger and modulate different systems and things in your body at a cellular level that make up your health span.
Yep.
And they're intrinsically linked because they all have inputs into the same things. They're not siloed. They don't each do their own individual little job. You can't separate them out like that. They all play part and parcel. So you have to look after your physical health as well as your diet, as well as everything else. And so I came to the point where I'm not out exercising my bad diet anymore. I need to fix my diet. That doesn't mean that the exercise wasn't working and I need to stop the exercise or do a different exercise. It's different jigsaw pieces that you need to start to pull together and put in place around lifestyle.
Yes. I think we're at a point where most people think all you need to do is exercise. People who are a little bit more savvy say, well, it's diet and exercise. But actually, sleep is the foundation of health.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And you can have the best training program in the world. Yes. You can actually be following, pick a diet, any diet, you can adhere to that really well, and you can be super lean with it. But if you're not getting your sleep in, you won't be healthy. And we misunderstand, to use athletes as an example. We look at athletes, top athletes, for what healthy is. Top athletes are some of the least healthiest people because they're all about performance. And you can be healthy for a sport, but not healthy to function as in life. Probably some of the healthiest athletes out there are probably going to be around the middle distance runners in athletics. Lots of reasons around that. But I know guys say, oh, look at rugby players, you can be big, you can be strong, you can be fast and healthy. Actually, rugby players are just held together with kinesio tape. They're carrying lots of injuries. And we know their injury rate has increased over the last 20 years as the average weight of a rugby player has increased
Yeah.
by a huge amount as well.
Yeah.
And uh, being an athlete, it's specializing in a particular activity or activities for that sport. And sport fundamentally is about a mental game and having a strategy, and it's skill driven. You need different components of fitness to
Yeah.
do that. It's
Yeah.
nothing to
100%.
do with health. So you will sacrifice your health, whatever that might be, just to drive performance. And the more you go down the performance rabbit hole, the more you sacrifice a healthy
Yeah.
element. So having sleep, definitely we need natural light, getting outside. Is massively important. I've got a client, she's lost 25 kilos, and the big focus was sleep.
Yeah.
We've obviously addressed daily activity, we've addressed nutrition, we've addressed exercise with her, but at the crux of all of that was regular bedtime and a regular wake up time.
Yes.
And
That's actually really important. People don't appreciate the importance of routine when it comes to sleep. It's not about volume
look at our
so
kids.
much. Yeah.
You've obviously got kids, and I've got a daughter as well. Most of us are parents, but kids are very sensitive to routine.
Yeah.
You feed them at a certain time, you put them down to sleep, that is, at a
Yeah.
certain time, you get them up at a certain time,
Yeah.
and certainly at very, very young babies and into toddlers, that works very well. But if you get out of routine,
Oh, yeah.
all
Behavior
hell
goes
lets
out the
loose.
window.
Life is just hell, not only
Yeah.
now, the next day as well. And
Yeah.
as we get older, we think that doesn't matter so much. So we push back our bedtime to watch Netflix or doom scroll social media. But we still respond very well to a set bedtime and a set
Yeah.
wake time, to training at the same time rather than at random times, going to work at the same time and coming back at the same time, eating at the same time, getting out at the same time. So that natural light first exposure, first thing in the morning and again in the evening, really important. So routine it is a huge part. Half of what I do with my clients, I call stress management
Yeah.
uh, as well, because it's exercise is easy, it's black and white.
Mm.
If you train 1 hour a day, 6 days a week, that's such a tiny percentage of your week. What's that? 4% of your
Yeah.
week.
It's
It's
next to nothing.
really
Yeah.
small. Food is is simple but not easy because we're governed around social factors, eating with a
Mhm.
family, possibly entertaining clients, out with friends.
Mhm.
There's what we want versus what we need.
That's a
Uh,
big thing.
but
Yeah.
a lot of marketing bullshit. People think
Mm.
I'm getting my one of my five a day by drinking a fruit smoothie that has got as much sugar in it as a full fat can of Coke.
Yeah.
Uh, so a lot of marketing gimmicks out there, but if we focus on the fundamentals and routine, and then managing stress, whether that's relationships, it's the
Mm.
downtime. I see that as the next big thing in the next 10 years in the fitness industry. And I'm calling that now. But half of what I do is getting guys to learn how to interpret signs of stress. I monitor HRV very closely,
Mhm.
and their resting heart rate, and how do we bring this down over time? Because having a
Mm.
good or a bad day, it's just how the nervous system is responding to something.
Yeah.
So it's recognizing this, but interpreting the data to make informed decisions as to the actions that we take. It's
Yeah.
not a forcing it. Back in my 20s, how I train somebody in their 20s, I can be very heavy-handed,
Mm.
low life stressors, and they bounce back really
Oh, yeah.
quickly. Somebody in their 50s, they can still train hard, but I do need to be very careful with intensity
Yeah.
and volume with that as well. It's not that they shouldn't be exposed to it, absolutely should. And then I think eating as well, it's around instead of dieting, learning better habits, better
Mm.
education around food and portion sizes, um, and feeding the body with what it needs rather than giving in to those emotional responses that we
Yeah.
typically have around food.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
won't demonize a food group, or you want to
Oh, I
go.
will.
If you want a fish and chip dinner, crack on. But it doesn't have to be every week, but let's
Yeah.
create the opportunity for you to have that where it will have minimal impact. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good thing to touch on a little bit. So you've mentioned about giving your body what it needs, rather than just what you want. And I think a lot of people don't appreciate that you've got two completely separate systems that govern your hunger and satiety. You've got what we'll call your homeostatic hunger system, which is governed by your need for essential nutrients. We're all human beings, which means we've got the exact same requirement for essential nutrition. We've got certain essential amino acids, certain essential fatty acids, certain essential vitamins and minerals that your body have to obtain via the diet because you can't produce them yourself. You have to have them. If you don't have them, you run into deficiency. Deficiency leads to disease long term. So you have to get these essential nutrients via your diet. Your homeostatic hunger system will cause you to be hungry at certain periods of time where it needs certain inputs, and it'll cause you to want certain things. But you've got a separate hunger system which sits in your brain, and it all sits around your endorphin feedback loops. And this is where modern processed food has sort of, you'll see a lot of people describe it as the tobacco industry moved into the processed food industry. That people cast their minds back to where tobacco was going through the courts. I think we're talking the 60s, 70s, somewhere around there. And it became obvious that tobacco was addictive and that tobacco was causing health decline and issues. You then saw that addictive model move from the tobacco industry into the food industry. And suddenly you had the advent of hyper palatable foods and stuffs, where engineers figured out that you can hit the bliss point, which is the level of deliciousness that triggers an endorphin response in the brain. And the body, if you have an appreciation for how endorphins evolved and the role that they're meant to play, you get dopamine responses to reinforce a behavior. Dopamine is your motivation hormone. We've ended up in a position where that is being manipulated to drive behaviors that aren't beneficial overall. For example, if I eat ice cream, I have a very unhealthy relationship with ice cream. I have to stay away from it because there's no such thing as a moderate amount of ice cream. I will eat the entire tub in a single sitting, and I know I will, and there'll be nothing I can do about it, because if I stop myself from doing it, I'm fighting an internal war. So if I eat a bit of ice cream, that dopamine feedback loop that I've built up over decades of thoroughly enjoying ice cream and eating it whenever I want, however much I want, that feedback loop is triggered and I want more. That dopamine tells me I want more, and I will go chase that behavior. Now, obviously, there's some willpower and stuff to be applied, but that's the point that I'm getting to, is that is an entirely different hunger signal to my homeostatic hunger signal, where my body's telling me I need a particular essential nutrient. And people don't recognize this difference between the two signaling systems. They think, oh, I'm hungry, I'm hungry.
Actually, I think it's more complex than that as well.
Oh, yeah, massively, yeah.
In the fact that people talk about listen to your body. Well, we've actually lost touch with the signs and the signals that our body is telling us on a second-by-second basis. And we're often misinterpreting signs of thirst for hunger.
Yeah.
We're misinterpreting signs of I need something sweet for actually a need for salt. And it's not so black and white. And what you're talking about, I do agree with, is also exacerbated through the modern world, whereby you go back to the 80s and beforehand, we ate around a table as a family. Whereas now we're sat in front of the TV, now we're sat at a desk and we're kind of scrolling social media. So we're eating mindlessly, and we're not, digestion starts in the mouth. It's that mechanical breakdown of the food. It's we're increasing production of saliva where we've got digestive enzymes, but we're now gulping instead of thoroughly chewing. Because I'm in a social situation, I can't speak with my mouth full, so I need to chew my food, put my cutlery down, have the conversation, and go on a repeat cycle. We're now gulping down our food, increasing the stress on our digestive system, regardless of what we're eating, healthy or not so healthy.
Yeah.
But we're racing off meals. So we're eating a meal now in 5 minutes, whereas it takes approximately 20 odd minutes to get the fullness signals from the stomach to the brain.
Yeah.
So we're now overeating as well. Because I'm not full, so I'll keep on eating. And some people say, particularly this generation, that I've been brought up to clear my plate. That's something else as well. But it is very complicated. So food now is no longer social. It's about something we do as part of a cheap form of entertainment.
Yeah.
So we're not consciously eating. We're chewing 3-5 times before we swallow, as opposed to 20, 25 times.
Yeah.
To break it down. So I think it's really, it's not black and white. It's really quite complicated.
Hugely so.
I always say to a client where they're looking to work with me, is your partner on board? Because if you're looking to do the Lone Ranger with this, you'll fail. Behind every successful man is a really strong, powerful woman. Was it Barack Obama who said that? Somebody.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
But it has to come from the family unit. And certainly as a guy, are you prepared to get involved with the food shopping, the meal preparation and the cooking and stuff, rather than sort of outsourcing it to your wife or your partner?
Yeah.
That's another problem, because our partners will just, out of love, give us more, because I know you like that ice cream, Ricky. I'm not just going to give you a scoop. I'm going to give you 3 scoops because I love you and I know you've had a really hard day.
Yeah.
You're not going to say no.
No.
Let me give you 2 scoops back. Yeah, who does that?
No.
So it is really difficult. And then there's also peer pressure of when you're eating out as well, possibly with friends or clients even. Go on, just have that one. It won't do any harm. It won't kill you.
Yeah, and you almost see. I struggled with alcohol for many years, and I stopped drinking completely in September of 2023. It's the second time in my life that I stopped drinking teetotal, because I like alcohol and me are bad news. But you almost see that same, like everyone can relate to the peer pressure when we talk about alcoholism and people who decide not to drink. And you see that stereotypical peer pressure, oh, just have one. I'm not someone who can just have one. Like the moment I have one, I want it all. Like I feel fantastic when I drink. I don't want to just have one. And people recognize that so readily. But you also see the same with regard to food. Like, you see someone trying to like clean up their diet, eat a bit more cleanly, sit in the social setting and go, you know what, I'm eating this way now, so I'm going to forego that particular thing on the menu or this thing that the sort of group is having, and that same social interaction takes place. People are like, oh, come on, like you can just have it this once. So you're being antisocial. You're not partaking with us. Like you're being awkward. Why are you being like a it's the exact same scenario, but it's applied to food instead of alcohol. It's weird that people do that, eh?
And we're at a point, things are starting to change with alcohol, I think, now, whereby I've never really got the taste of alcohol. If I never drank another drop, I wouldn't miss it. You know, it's not that I've never had a drink. I have, but I would describe myself as I don't drink. It just doesn't do anything for me apart from make me feel like shit. But it's, if you go somewhere for work, do, or out with friends, I don't drink. Oh, don't be boring. Go on, have one.
Exactly. Yeah.
You've got that pressure. What's wrong with you? Well, I can actually have fun perfectly sober. Is your life so shitty that you have to numb your feelings with a drug just to feel good? Well, who's got the shit life here? I had that conversation with a guy with an old manager, and it didn't go down too well, because it was that he was pushing with the alcohol, calling me boring and just live a little and all the rest of it. He had a heart attack 10 years later. So who had the last laugh? Unfortunately, I don't mean that unkindly. And then in the workplace as well, how do we reward employees for good performance? There's a bottle of bubbly. There's a box of chocolates. It's with all the bad stuff as well. Let's celebrate and go out for down the local pub for some beers on a Friday night.
Yeah.
You know, so it's intertwined, it's ingrained in our society. So I'm not saying don't drink, just be an adult about it. And I think the other thing I hear an awful lot is everything in moderation. I have a beer a night. Well, the average pint of
That's
a
not
British
moderate, is it?
that glass of wine is usually 2 units. So you have a glass of wine a night. That's 14 units a week, which is the NHS maximum recommendation. So, okay, have you eaten enough protein all week? Have you had the minimum servings of fruits and vegetables per day all week? Have you done the minimum requirements of 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity, 2 strength sessions? Have you got your steps in today? Oh, no. So let's not talk about moderation on the crap stuff when you're ignoring all the good stuff. It's just an excuse to do what they like.
Hey everyone, I hope that you are enjoying the discussion so far. I apologize for interrupting the episode, but I just want to take a moment to talk to you about the work that I do with Zinzino. Zinzino are a brilliant Scandinavian biotech and life sciences firm. Their concept of test-based personalized nutrition is absolutely revolutionary, and they are the pioneers of test-based personalized nutrition. I use their products and solutions myself and my family. In fact, we use multiple of their products. And Zinzino has been instrumental in helping me identify that I was omega-3 deficient, horrendously so, and to get my omega-3 deficiency resolved. You see, their at-home tests give you the data and insights needed to inform your dietary strategy to see whether you have any key essential nutrient deficiencies or imbalances that need addressing. And where you do, they have targeted supplementation stacks that are personalized to you according to your age, sex, and body weight, which means they are most effective to get you back to optimal. This isn't about just avoiding deficiency. This is about getting you back to optimal, and that's a complete and utter game changer. So if you would like to know more, I have linked a short survey in the episode description. Complete the survey. It asks you some simple questions about your health goals and desires. It takes less than a minute to complete, and what I'll give you off the back of that is a personalized product recommendation out of Zinzino solution catalog, telling you which I think best suit your desires and needs and why. I'll then also personally reach out to you to see if there's any questions or queries that I can answer. Let me take the guesswork out of your health journey.
And the moderation one, I've done a bit of a write-up on this before because it's an argument that I like to poke fun at because people don't appreciate how much what we think is moderate has changed over time. So someone will say to me, everything in moderation would be fine. I go, okay, cool. Moderation when? Now? Or moderation 50 years ago? Or moderation 100 years ago? Because if you have a look at the things that people like to excuse as having, because they're having it in moderation and therefore it's part and parcel of a healthy diet or a healthy lifestyle, those things weren't available 50 years ago. They certainly weren't around 100 years ago. So which version of moderation are we talking about? And it tends to be used around things like alcohol, confectionaries, hyper-processed, hyper-palatable, man-made food substances.
You talk about 50 years ago. That's a great example. Look at the summer beach pictures from the 1980s and backwards.
Yeah.
And the average man, working man, was relatively wiry.
Yeah.
Yes. We walked more. There were more physical labor jobs. Not so many people exercised, of course, because it wasn't so much of a thing. But they ate less. There wasn't as much spare money. Sure, there were more pubs and more men drank, but they probably walked 2 miles to the pub and walked two miles on the way, staggered 2 miles on the way back. Whereas now you look at a beach pic, If you were to see a wiry man, he will be an exception, whereas everybody else is going to be overweight. Obesity is kind of stabilized, but it's the level of people being overweight that is growing. We're also seeing a rise of something that I call skinny fat.
Mhm.
So in clothes, guys look ordinarily trim. They look
Yeah.
pretty. Take their shirt off, and they've got the soft boobs of a prepubescent girl. They've got the belly. They're under muscled and over fat.
Yes. 100%.
They've got no arse. They've got no appreciable muscle. No quads at all. And that's on the increase as well. But in clothes, they look great. And that's a concern because that will lead to issues later on as well.
Yeah, well, it's the same metabolic dysfunction that's happening internally. It's not different.
Yeah, so talking about standards, on a body fat level, I genuinely believe the majority of men can live between 10 and 15% body fat. And I get a lot of pushback on that, saying impossible. You've got to live, you can't, you're going to starve yourself. No, you just don't know how. And it's about lifestyle, and it's about lifestyle habits.
It goes, sorry to interject there, but when we say lifestyle, I think what people need to start to appreciate and just take a second to sit back and have a look at modern life has become so out of tune with human physiology and physiological requirements that to structure a lifestyle which looks after your physiology starts to become epically inconvenient. You have to go out of your way to include and do things that look after your physiology that are so wildly different to everything that modern lifestyle promotes, which is all convenience focused, all pleasure focused, entertainment focused, that it's inconvenient to do. And if you're not willing to inconvenience yourself, you're going to have a bloody hard time looking after yourself.
Modern life is challenging, and I think throughout previous generations, it's always been challenging. It's just different pressures, different way of living. We know the cost of living is increasing today. Both parents typically work in a two-parent household because of the financial pressures. Whereas when I grew up, dad went to work, mum stayed at home, and that was pretty typical of my schoolmates as well. Things are different now, which means we rely more on those processed foods that you can just chuck a pizza in the oven for 15 minutes to get it down your neck, and cheap entertainment for the kids. Watch an iPad because both parents are now too tired in the evening. So it is really tough. But if it's important to you, you'll find a way.
But it generally only becomes important when you've faced a crisis. And this is a weird thing that I've noticed. I happen to have hit my crises in my early 30s. And at the time, I thought I was unlucky. But as the years have gone on, I've started to realize that actually I was incredibly fortunate that it happened then. Because talking to health coaches, the typical age of the clients that they work with tend to be much, much closer to their 50s. And you're talking decades of malalignment between lifestyle and physiological requirements. And the struggle that people tend to have at that age versus what I went through in my 30s is quite different. And I've been very fortunate that I've landed up in a situation where if I continue to look after myself, the vast majority of my life, I will have a good health span. But it wouldn't have been that way had I not hit my health crises. I would have been the typical male and sort of gone another 2 decades of neglecting myself, thinking, oh, I'm just aging. That's why this hurts. That's why I can't do that anymore. That's just age. Before then hitting a crisis somewhere in my late 40s, early 50s, and then seeking the help of a professional.
You're right. Most of us come to that, myself included. The injuries that I had from powerlifting and that wake up moment when I was 31 that I shared with you. But I also had high blood pressure. I also had high cholesterol level. It wasn't medicated because, I had to look in the mirror. I had the body of a Greek god. I had world-class strength. I'm all right as I am. Never mind those numbers. They don't matter. But actually, looking back, I was also probably pre-diabetic a number of times, if not, and there's no evidence of this, but I wouldn't have been surprised that I was type 2 diabetic, because my nutrition approach at that time was very archaic, going back to the 90s, of eat enough calories just to keep your weight up. I was one of those individuals that people hate, where I could lose weight very easily. I struggle to put weight on. So I don't want to share those nutrition practices because it's not healthy at all. But I would eat 2 liters of ice cream. I know you like ice cream a day, every day. And I did that for years. Just calories, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it would be included. So, coming to be a father, it was, look, there's a lot that needs to change. All of a sudden, heart health needs to change, and lifting weights, although you get your heart rate up, the mechanisms that we increase heart rate are very different from aerobic exercise. And we actually increase ventricle wall thickness through weight training, which isn't good. And we reduce the capacity of the left heart ventricle as well. So you need the aerobic training. And it's been a big journey to build my heart fitness and health over the last 10 years. But I also had a case of last year. I got back from holiday, and I had what appeared to be atrial fibrillation. Went on for about a week. Saw my GP, did some checks, did some blood tests, and said nothing makes sense, because I had a VO2 max of 60. My blood pressure is 110/70 typically. My resting heart rate is high 30s to low 40s.
That's very good.
My triglycerides are minimal. My blood work, actually, I spoke to a consultant yesterday, said if every guy your age could have blood work like yours, I wouldn't have a job. So, because I do these tests twice a year, but it was a case of, okay, this is going on. It came down to lack of sleep and dehydration from being in a hot environment. But I was also really fortunate during that, in terms of, if I'd have been overweight, I'd have been really worried. If I had high blood pressure, I'd have been really worried. But the fact that I was in the best possible position, that whatever the diagnosis was going to be, my body was in a best position to handle whatever it was. Yes, that's what fitness gives you. It's not about sports performance. It improves your survivability should something happen. It improves quality of life as well. And certainly aerobic fitness, above all else, is the #1 indicator. VO2 max is the gold standard.
I think that you've touched on something quite important there, and I think people will have an appreciation for it now as well, because the pandemic seemed to highlight this quite acutely, that people who were physically fit, not talking top-level athletes, talking general people who looked after their health well, seemed to fare a lot better through the pandemic than the majority of people who didn't look after their health did. And as a result, on the back end of that, we've seen a skyrocket in health awareness in the general population.
Yes. COVID was really interesting, both from a government's perspective. That's very different, of course. There were very incredibly fit people who got COVID and got very ill. In the early days, I got COVID, got it aggressively. When people were going into hospital and incubated, but I got pneumonia with it. And I can remember looking at my wife, and we were both thinking, this isn't good, but whatever happened,
it's rough.
Going to the hospital. But I'm thinking, I'm so glad it's me and not you, because I'm a lot fitter than my wife. But my recovery was really quick post-COVID. Yes. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but looking back, I'd come off a bout of laryngitis, so immune system would have already been overworked. But I'd also come off the back of an overreaching phase in my training before COVID came a thing. So going through a period of overreaching, I'm depleting my body's resources and its ability to recover. So even if there's a cold round, I'm increasing my chance of getting that.
Yeah.
COVID hit. My wife was a nurse. She was exposed to it, brought it home, and it's likely I got it off her.
Yeah.
But yes, it improves survivability. So we know that aerobic fitness, that if you're in the top 2 percentile, can improve your survivability rate by up to 400%. That's massive.
Yeah.
So getting that VO2 max up, and the first step for every person out there in terms of fitness levels should be to aim for a superior VO2 max. So walking won't do that. Walking is an activity, unless you're incredibly unfit or have an underdeveloped aerobic system.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
Walking is great. Don't get me wrong. I do it myself every day, get the steps in, lots of mental, physical, emotional benefits, but it's not aerobic exercise. We need enough stress on the aerobic and cardiorespiratory system to provide the adaptive response needed. That's roughly 60 to 70% of maximum heart rate for zone 2. But if you're walking and you're getting your heart rate up to that, that's a great indication that your systems, including your metabolic health, is not in a good place.
Yeah.
But the mistake we make is not monitoring this, and we do too much HIIT.
Yeah.
One doesn't replace the other. I know some people have said to me, I hate HIIT and I'm on a downer on HIIT because I'm outspoken about it. No, HIIT is incredibly useful. It has its place. It doesn't replace aerobic training. We're training a different energy system. So if we can think about doing roughly 10% of HIIT work over the course of a week, and guys in this age group, you're probably only going to have the ability to recover from one true HIIT session a week. If you're doing strength work as well. And I know guys out there do multiple HIIT sessions, 3, 4, 5 sessions a week. They actually fall into this trap of training too hard on the easy sessions, but not hard enough on the hard sessions, meaning they train in this middle unproductive ground. So it becomes interval training, but not high intensity interval training. Yes, because real all-out high interval training is going to leave you in a mess.
Well, it should leave you in tatters. Yeah.
With everything else that goes on in life, you've got the ability to recover possibly 1 session a week, for some guys once every 2 weeks. So it's learning to understand what your body needs, coming back to what we said before, rather than thinking, well, if hard is good, harder must be better.
Yeah, no, I used to be very much of that mindset. And then I started to pay attention to some of your stuff around mobility. And as we spoke about earlier, I transitioned from your sort of generic bodybuilding-esque weight training into more body weight, calisthenics type training, gymnastic type training. And I became very acutely aware very quickly that I didn't have the movement and the range of motion in certain things that you were expected to have to do a certain movement. And so I had to slow myself down and realize that I needed to go right back to basics, train in the mobility necessary to do the movement that I was trying to do before I could get the movement in to build the base strength and base function of the joint that I was trying to work. And it was a really nice mindset change for me, because it then became not about aesthetics. I wasn't trying to look a certain way. I wasn't trying to build a certain strength in a certain muscle. The way I've come to appreciate movement is I want to make sure that my joints can function with power and control through their full range of motion. That's all I want from my joints. And my muscles need to work through that. And it's this whole system that works together to put you through that full deep squat with the ability to explode up into a jump. When I started doing this, I couldn't do that.
Mobility is often confused for flexibility. I had bit of a conversation with a guy on LinkedIn this morning saying, "Oh, I'm improving my mobility," and he's doing 20 minutes of stretching a day. Well, that's not the same thing. What
Yeah.
mobility is? Let's add some definition into this. It
Yeah.
is flexibility plus strength at your end ranges of motion. Okay.
Yes.
We tend to think hamstrings are a great example. I get lots of messages. I need to improve my flexibility because I can't touch my toes. Well, why do you need to touch your toes? What do you think that's going to give you? It's if you can get within 6 inches of your fingertips touching the floor, 10 minutes of stretching, you can probably palm
Flat
your
hand
hand
on the floor.
on
Yeah.
the floor, and then 10 minutes after that, you'll be back to where you were prior to the stretching
Yeah.
session. But where are you going to get hurt? In what range are you likely to get hurt? It's in your end ranges.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
flexibility by itself isn't enough. We need to add strength to reassure the nervous system that it is safe to use that range, but also to strengthen the tissues to handle load. So if we look at the squat, guys don't necessarily generally get hurt on the way down into a full squat. Where do they get hurt? Coming back up. And it's in those extreme ranges. Yes. So flexibility gets you to where you want to go. Mobility is going to get you out of that position safely. And
Yes.
most guys, 40s and 50s and onwards, but I'm seeing a lot of guys in their 30s now that need to improve their mobility rather than their flexibility. Shoulder, again, is another great one. I can't get my arm above my head, so actually I'm going to compensate by using my lower back. But we need both a range of external and internal shoulder rotation to go through shoulder flexion, and we start to cheat, but we're not aware of these cheats. So what we do in the gym is a great example. My shoulders are a bit dodgy, so I'm going to do seated overhead presses. We're not actually addressing any underlying causes. How does your scapula move around the back of the rib cage? Surprisingly common issue, particularly as we tend to compress the back of our rib cage by sitting in chairs so much, cars, sofa, in the office, etc.
Yeah.
So we need to take a much wider approach to this, because all of a sudden you'll get on an airplane, and I saw this last week, somebody trying to put a bag into an overhead lock on the airplane, and it's all my back. Your problem's not shoulder. Sorry, your problem's not the back problem. The problem is your shoulder, but you've overworked the lower back. So we need a global approach as well. And mobility also, I think a lot of social media influencers, and I see it a lot on Instagram, whereby you get these youngsters, the guys just in a pair of shorts all oiled up, and they got the special lighting. You get the young girls in their hot pants and their little bra tops. They're doing these extreme ranges that looks really funky and really very attractive. Think, I'll do that. I can't do it. But there's a difference between being able to express a range or mobility and something that actually builds it.
Yes.
But we don't understand the difference, or generally we don't understand the difference. So we start saving all of these videos. We have this massive collection of exercises that we kind of throw in and try randomly with no system or model to apply it to.
Yeah.
So in my 30s, I couldn't do a pistol squat. I'd lost that ability. I couldn't get into a full squat. I'd had 2 knee surgeries in my 30s as well. I've got a torn left hip labrum. I've got spondylitis. I've got scoliosis. And I get a lot of things where, particularly on LinkedIn, that guy saying, "Oh, it's all right for you because I've got stiff knees," or "I've got an arthritic knee, I've got a dodgy back." Yeah, look, I've probably got that and more. My question is, what are you doing about it? Because what you don't see, it's the tip of the iceberg. You don't see all the work. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's taking you 20, 30 years to get to this point. You ain't going to change that in a couple of fucking weeks. So I work with my clients a minimum of a year.
Yeah. And that I think that's an important point. The whole sort of industry, fitness industries, let's say, tends to be these 6-week to 12-week chunks. Like, come work with me for 6 weeks, come work with me for 12 weeks. And then you go away and you're sort of left to your own devices. And I don't think that many people within a 6 to 12 week window build something that becomes lifestyle. I think that they
No,
need longer to establish it.
let's face it, like in any industry, PTs have got it tough. They're all well-meaning, but they're
Mhm.
trying to give the public and potential clients what they want.
Yes.
So, as I mentioned, mobility is a lead-in for me, but giving you a mobility program is generally, yeah, you need it, but it's not just what you need. I've never met somebody who just needs that.
Yeah.
It's everything else that goes with that as well. So when I see these PTs saying, look, lose 20 pounds of fat in 12 weeks, well, let's rewind. Let's go back to bodybuilders in their competition preparation of sort of 24 to 30 weeks. And these guys know what the hell they're doing with food
Mm-hmm.
to get down to a single digit body fat. So
Yeah.
you losing 20 pound in 12 weeks, very possible. You're going to hate your life. You're going to be a miserable bastard to be around for your wife. Your kids are going to hate you, and you're going to be grumpy, and you're going to have shit sleep as well.
Yeah.
What have you learned in those 12 weeks? Sufferance and deprivation.
Yeah. And do you want to go back to that in and of yourself? No.
And you rebound afterwards to a heavier point. So again, coming back to lifestyle habits and education with what your body needs, and that takes time.
Yeah.
You know, there's no quick fix. So my messages are not sexy. They're honest, but everybody thinks they're okay as they are.
Yeah.
But here's an interesting statistic for you. 75 of UK men are either overweight or obese.
75%.
Equally, 75% of men think they're fit and healthy.
Yeah,
How
that's
deluded are
self-image.
we? How deluded are we? Never mind. If we can actually drill down into the 75% being overweight and obese and look at things like musculoskeletal disorders, cardiovascular related diseases, and all, including type 2 diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, and all cholesterol and all the rest of it. So how deluded are we that 75% of men think they're okay as they are, think they believe they're fit and healthy? By what standard?
Yeah, it comes back to your
By what
conversation around standards. Yeah.
You know,
And I think it's almost the moderation argument again, but from a slightly different angle. We could take the moderation argument and look at food and go, moderation according to what? Like, you're certainly not eating in moderation to what was eaten 50 years ago. And by the same perspective, physical fitness and determining what is okay now, you compare that to 50 years ago, it's not the same thing. And we see this in other places as well. I don't know that many people are aware, but when you go and get your bloods done, what you tend to see here in the UK at least is you'll have an average range provided. And as long as you fall somewhere in that average range, your feedback will be like, yeah, you're okay, you're doing well. What isn't explained to you is that average range is not what is optimal. It's the average of the last 2,000 patients that have been tested.
Which is why I work with a private consultant and I test twice a year, because I can look great. I walk around 12% body fat year round.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can tell you how strong I am. I can tell you how aerobically fit I am. And I can have the body of a Greek god. But gog? I don't know what a gog is. God. But what's going on underneath the skin?
Yeah.
Yes. And that's why I do private blood tests twice a year, because I'm aware of these averages. And so when I said about this atrial fibrillation, and like the GP said, your blood pressure is low. No, that's normal for me. Your heart rate is a bit low. Are you feeling okay? Look, I'm incredibly fit. But actually, I took along my iPad because I track a lot of data and I've got decades of data. And I went, look, this is what's normal for me. I'm
Yeah.
incredibly fit. Yes, I can show you my blood pressure, resting heart rate, HRV, recovery heart rate, my waist to hip ratio, and lots of other bits and pieces, yeah, that impact our long-term health. So you're saying this is low? No, this is normal for me,
Yeah.
because I'm not a typical average 50-year-old man.
Yeah, but you just see that sliding scale, like the way that scale is slid more and more towards unhealthy being the norm is mad.
Yeah, it doesn't take much to take a step away from the norm, but actually, we're in a position now. We really want to be working to move so far away from the norm
Yeah.
that other people are intimidated by your state. I'm not talking intimidated as in physical assertion, aggressiveness by that,
Yeah.
but it makes them feel uncomfortable about their own state.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Because
needs to shine that spotlight of self-awareness on them.
yeah, yeah, and again, I come back to standards. Guys call themselves fit; they call themselves strong. Okay, by what standard?
Yeah. Compared to who?
Well, I just am because I do something so many times a week. Okay, by what standard? Simply turning up is not enough. Hence, I mentioned about this growing void between top athletes and your average man. We know that post-COVID, spin classes are up, gym memberships are at an all-time high,
Yeah.
boot camp attendees are at an all-time high, things like yoga. So all of these exercise classes, we're doing more, but we're still deteriorating. There's two parts to this. We've got to ask why. Well, one, there's the entertainment piece. We're doing it for I'm chasing a feeling and not chasing results. We're taking a short-termist approach to it rather than the long term. And then we've got the intent that also matters. And lastly, it's not just about exercise, as we've both said. It's about your food, it's about your sleep. You could train, I don't care what you do, 7 days a week for an hour at a time, but you're sat on your ass for the rest of the 23 hours. So you're classed actually as inactive.
Yeah.
We're in that position for a lot of men, certainly. Oh, I go to the gym. Great. You do nothing for the rest of the day. You're inactive because actually you show me your steps, less than 5,000 a day. You're inactive.
Yeah.
But I went to the gym.
100%.
Doesn't matter.
I fall into that category myself. Like I very easily can be sedentary all day because I work a desk job. I sit in front of a laptop. The vast bulk of my day, if I'm not making a conscious effort to get up and move, hours pass by without you even realizing it. Hours pass by. Yes, I'll get a workout in over lunch, and then I'll come back, and then I'll sit down again, and then hours can pass. Like you have to think to get up and move to be active.
We're incredibly good at organizing and planning in our professional working lives. Your meetings, your diary, the projects, reports, workload, and all the rest of it. But outside of that, we're not so
Terrible.
good.
No, we're terrible.
And I think we can plan. I'm not saying this is easy, but there are simple solutions. It's the application and the consistency that's the challenge.
Yes.
Where we can plan those walks and getting outside for that natural light. And it might be, look, can I park a street further away for when I take my kids to school? So I'm walking an extra 100 meters in. I know that takes another couple of minutes, but you've got to walk another 100 meters back.
Yeah.
But it's time with your kids as well. You're getting quality conversation. The same at the end of school. If you're in a building at work, instead of using the toilet on the same floor, go to the toilet above or below you.
Stairs, yeah.
And use
the stairs, not the elevator.
I've seen it and I've done it in the past as well. Colleague on the other side of the office, so you pick up the phone to do an internal call to have a chat. Fuck, get up off your ass and go and walk to them. Yeah.
I also think you touched on it earlier in the conversation, but the importance of routine, building routines. If you're going to approach, how would I say it? You require certain inputs and stimuli to look after your health span. If you're going to approach those haphazardly, you're going to get haphazard results and suboptimal results. You have to accept that you need to build a routine around prioritizing those inputs as part of the day-to-day life. and have your set times and set structures that you can go after them, because that's what builds consistency. And consistency is the key to success.
Yes. Every man and their dog today talks about habits. They talk about 28 days to form a habit. I'm not a habit guru or expert, but I do disagree. We need to build a routine
Yeah.
fundamentally, first of all, and it takes longer than 28 days.
Yeah, it needs to be a lifestyle.
Again, the wider lifestyle, and it's that lifestyle routine. Now, I'm neurodivergent, so routine for me, I thrive on. If I'm thrown out of routine, or I can't cope, all hell lets loose, and I'm very unproductive. So, for me, building a routine, I see as my superpower. I use that as my superpower. And going back to my powerlifting career, building a routine, sticking to it was my superpower, not my physical genetics, as it
Yeah.
were, in leverages to lift a lot of weight, because it's doing the same thing over and over and over again, which is really boring for years and decades. Yes, not a couple of weeks or a couple of months. And you mentioned about consistency. So important. We fall for the trap of intensity. It's that immediate gratification. It's kind of getting that big pump, chasing fatigue, getting a heart rate jacked up. The feeling of good, I don't understand, but I know a lot of people like that. I've had a good workout. No, doesn't mean to say it's productive at all. So can you repeat that every day, week on week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade? And that's the struggle. So being consistent is so important.
I think a good way, and I've heard other people speak about this before, and I'd love to credit them, but for the life of me, I can't think the name of who it was. Might have been Andrew Huberman, maybe. I think people need to find a sport and get back into the habit of play. Because I remember being a kid and I was incredibly active, grew up in South Africa, played rugby, swimming, surfing, loads of sports, and never did any dedicated training as such in pursuit of those sports. And I did a lot of sports competitively as well at the national level. And I was always in really good shape through play, because it was fun and it was engaging. It was very easy for that to be part of my lifestyle. I'm actively working at the moment on different methods to enable surfing to be part of my lifestyle again, because I love surfing. Like, of all physical activities that I could do, surfing is by far the most fun thing that I can think of to do. And I want that to be part of my day-to-day life again. And if people can find, sorry, yep.
I was going to say, here's a thought for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to get back into surfing because it's something you really, really enjoy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I disagree with Huberman in terms of playing a sport. I would actually say go and find something that you enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 1,001. I don't care if it's ballet, dancing,
Mm-hmm.
rock climbing, paragliding, lifting weights, running, cycling, rowing, whatever. Find something you enjoy, stick to it, build the habit.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a step sideways on this. We know competitive athletes cross-train. Doesn't matter if you're a boxer, a martial artist, if you're a runner or rower, they cross-train to build. Well, one, there's injury mitigation there, but also as well, it's building the necessary systems to enhance their ability to perform as well.
Yeah.
So surfing. What do you need to be able to do to be surfing when you're 60?
Yeah.
And work backwards. So
Yeah.
you're going to need a degree of mobility.
Oh,
You're going
yes.
to need a degree of physical strength. You're going to need a lot of balance, to stay on the board. You're going to need the aerobic capacity to recover. Remember, aerobic fitness drives recovery.
Yeah, you're going to need the aerobic fitness to paddle, because let me tell you something, lying on a board, arched up and paddling through water,
Yep.
that is a fitness that very few things on earth simulate. And as a consequence, if you're only doing it once in a blue moon, you are exposed massively for how unpaddling fit you are.
So if you go to the beach, how many 60, 70-year-olds do you see surfing?
Very few.
Right. The question is why? So we go and do surfing. You see lots of youngsters, the late teens, guys in their 20s. We've all watched Baywatch. I grew up on Paul's Beach, lots of surfing going on in Cornwall there, fantastic. But where are the old boys? What do you need to be doing to maintain that for the next 20 years, Ricky? So you can break it down. Well, I love surfing because that's going to keep me active. It's not this. I hate cardio. It's dull as fucking ditch water. I'm a meathead at heart. But 80% of my training is aerobic training because I value the benefits that it brings. I don't like doing it, but I love what it brings to my health and what I can do in everyday life. Okay. So it's working out what you need to do for the next 20 years to keep doing the thing. And so it becomes a means to an end. Yeah. So that when your kids grow up, leave home, that they have their family, you're not going to be the grandfather that's sitting in his comfy chair going, hello, grandkids, because you don't have the ability to get on the floor
and play with them.
And get up again on your own esteem. Oh my God, dodgy hip, my knees won't let me get down on the floor. Oh, I need to change my continence pad because I've just filled it. Yeah. So we can break it down, but we don't have that ability for a lot of us to think long term. We assume that we'll be okay.
Yeah. And so people treat their health like that. We're almost programmed to treat our health reactively rather than proactively.
We take it for granted. First of all.
You assume everything works until something doesn't, and then the modern medical system will, and I've seen this myself. When I started a ketogenic diet in 2018 and did tremendously well on that, and then I went full carnivore in June 2022, and I've done really well on that. But when I go to my doctor and I go request some bloods just to see what's going on under the hood, so to speak, the very first question is, why? What symptoms are you having? Like, well, no, I'm not having any symptoms. I don't have any health concerns. I feel fantastic. But I want to know my data so that I can know whether there's anything I need to be aware of long term. Is there anything that I need to change direction on now to prevent issues in the future? But the whole medical system seems to be one of wait until something goes wrong, and then we'll do the diagnostics to figure out what's gone wrong, rather than keep on top of your data, observe the trends, and make adjustments where it's necessary to avoid issues.
I think it's the Wikipedia definition of health is the absence of disease. But the choices and the actions, both conscious and unconscious, that we take on a daily basis will either be moving us forward towards a disease or further away. Unfortunately, we're in a case now for most of us where we're moving towards, but we're okay. But just because we fall into this average range that you mentioned on the blood test, I'm okay as I am. We've got it's a bit of a ridiculous measurement. The NHS say for a guy, waist measurement of 37 inches and above, you need to lose a little bit of weight. Now, you and I, 5'7" each, yeah? You got 37-inch waist at 37, you look like a Teletubby. Can't dress that up, okay? So actually using a waist to hip ratio is a lot better because that talks about not just the fact that you're carrying that you can see, but potentially your visceral fat as well, but also look at your muscle distribution. Again, it exposes a lot of people from being over fat and under muscled because they don't have the glutes and the hip development, but they've got the belly on them. So, but there again, if you're a 7'2" basketball player, a 37-inch waist might leave you looking rather anorexic looking. So having just one measurement like that is almost pointless. again, it comes back to, let's look at standards. If we look at the hip to waist ratios, there's poor, there's average, there's good, and there's excellent. Well, average would leave you at the 37-inch
Mm.
waistline, somebody who's really quite fat, because that's based on the general populace for both men and women. Yes. So the goal should always be to come up excellent with your waist to hip
Yes.
ratio. Should be working towards that. And if we get our body fat levels down, this comes back to work or living within a 10 to 15% range will have you in that. And I'm pretty agnostic with exercise. And what I
Mhm.
mean by that is find something you enjoy,
Yeah.
but then do what your body needs. Yes, we
Yes.
know that the most effective form of exercise, most important one is cardiovascular exercise. That's heart health, most important muscle. Yes,
Mhm.
VO2 max is the biggest predictor of both your current health and also your predictor of mortality as well.
Mhm.
But then we need to lift weights.
Yeah.
Okay, we need muscle mass, we need the strength, we need the joint and tendon integrity as well.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's not about one thing, it's about a combination of things. And
Yes.
mobility training comes in terms of it enables us to keep doing those really effective forms of exercise.
Mm.
Sadly, I speak to a lot of guys of, look, I've been running for 20 years, I've got dodgy knees, I've now given it up and I'm cycling. Well, cycling is a great form of aerobic activity. It's terrible for bone density because you're not loading the
Yeah.
bone. Terrible for hip mobility and terrible for strength because it's only a concentric circular
Yeah.
action. Yes. So just like you wouldn't lift weights faster for cardio work. So we need to use the right type of exercise to do the right job for the right reason for the right person at the right time for the right task. There's no
Yeah.
bad exercise. Yes, and just because you can't do something now doesn't mean to say that it can't be so. So I
Yeah.
mentioned earlier in my 30s I couldn't do a pistol squat. For me, I can do a pistol squat at will. First thing in the
Mm.
morning, jump out of a chair and do one. Yeah, a lot of guys look at that as a high-end exercise, but I've worked to develop that to a point where if you think of a pyramid, most
Yeah.
guys say the tip of a pyramid exercise. For me, it's a bottom end of the pyramid.
Base end. Yeah.
That's my mobility capacity. So we want to focus on building up a really broad base of our
Mm.
capacities rather than focusing on the top end. And most guys actually, instead of focusing on that with fitness, they invert it,
Yeah.
just seeing too much on the high end stuff
Yeah.
without having the capacity to, which is why we see guys turning from running to cycling, which is why we see guys giving up squatting for leg pressing or leg extensions
Mm.
in the gym, as an example. I can no longer do press behind the neck because they're horrendous for your shoulder. So I'll do dumbbell presses. Just means we've never addressed underlying issues.
Yeah.
But how long until you have to give up dumbbell presses because you've lost the ability to
Yeah.
press overhead?
And you see that a lot in guys who just train free weights in the gym, and they'll sort of do this half range of motion and
Yeah.
then completely lack strength at the end ranges of motion, like you spoke about before. And when they come down into the end range, you can see the panic in their eyes and they have to drop the weight
So where are they going to get hurt?
in the end ranges.
Down here.
Yeah.
They're working here, they're chucking whatever weight
Yeah. Yeah.
overhead. They're going to get hurt here. And then it comes to everyday life. You have this full sense of confidence and ability because, oh, last week I was overhead pressing and I was using 50-kilo dumbbells. Great, that's a good weight. Okay. But now I've just lifted my child up to my shoulder who only weighs 20 kilos and I've got hurt.
Yeah.
Yes, which is nonsense. So a bit like in powerlifting, what is the point in being super strong when you can't get off the floor? What's
Yeah.
the point when you're super strong and you can't sit cross-legged on the floor, or that you get out of breath going up several flights of stairs? Yes. So I think we look at our sporting heroes and we specialize,
Mm.
but we need a broad range of things. And I want to introduce the analogy of the good old family car. Yeah.
Mhm.
I know I've got an Astra, Vauxhall Astra. Um, Nothing fancy. I have no pretense over cars at all. It's not fast, but it's relatively economical to run,
Mhm.
cheap to maintain. I can load it up to go on a family holiday to travel the other end of the UK. It can be done for a daily commute to work,
Mhm.
school run, shopping trip. I can hustle it down the country lanes on the bends. Yes, it can sit at 70 miles an hour for hours on the motorway if need
Yeah.
be, but it'd be crap on a track. It would be crap off road on the hills and in the ditches.
Yeah.
Yes, but we actually want to build a family car as a body in our body, and this is all of the systems.
Yeah.
So metabolic health, our ability to move, run, jump, climb, throw, roll around, and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
To do what we like without restriction, and it doesn't matter. You all of a sudden you end up somewhere on holiday and you want to go and hike 40 odd kilometers over undulating terrain. 3-year-old can't do that.
Mm.
Put them on your
On
shoulder
shoulders.
and you
Yeah.
do it without thinking about it. What if your 10-year-old got stuck up a tree? You've
Yeah.
got to climb up there, pick them up, and be able to have the ability to carry down. I've got a park over the back of us, and last summer, got somebody else's son down out of the tree that the dad couldn't get up into.
Yeah.
This guy, I'm guessing, late 20s.
Wow.
How embarrassing is that for him?
Yeah. Yeah. That's not good.
Yeah. So, we talk about health span, quality of life. Where does metabolic health come into this? Well, it's one of those systems, one of those processes that's going to allow us to maintain healthier muscle, better brain health as well. So think
Mhm. Mhm.
dementias there, but keep the body fat low enough so we are metabolically flexible enough to handle fats and carbohydrates as well without them being stored as excess body fat.
Yeah.
But it's not just about looks either. If we look at the quality of the muscle, so obviously visible fat we can see, we're aware now of visceral fat. But if we look at something like steak, and you've got something like Wagyu steak,
Yeah. Which I won't eat.
yeah, which is just basic. I look at that as just that's got to be disgusting. It's just fat. Where you've got the forgotten what the name is. You've got the
The,
injection
the
fat.
intramuscular fat.
Thank you, intramuscular fat versus something like
Yeah. The marbling.
a fillet steak, which is super lean. We actually want our muscles to be the fillet steak.
Yeah.
And we're only weight training is going to help with that, but in conjunction with nutrition, in conjunction with sleep and activity and all the rest of it. But that will play into our metabolic health as well. So the better our metabolic health and flexibility will support that.
Yeah.
So as you said at the beginning, it's never about one thing. I do get guys coming to me, I just want a mobility program. Well, yeah, let's explore everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Because
can have a mobility program, but you also need all the other foundational elements
if
that
you ain't
put
sleeping,
this together. Yeah.
if your gym routine is actually holding you back, you can have the best mobility routine in the world. It's just an add-on that when you're busy, you're not going to do and you're not going to get the
Yeah.
results from. We need to look at everything.
Yeah. It's lifestyle. It all comes down to lifestyle.
Yeah. But speak to your at work, speak to your colleagues. How many of them will say that they lead a healthy lifestyle?
Oh, most of them look at me like I'm a three-headed alien because I've gone down this route of wanting to talk about health and well-being and turn myself around. And I don't fall into the typical dad bod office jockey framework anymore.
Yeah. It was, I did put a video on LinkedIn on Saturday, jumping some steps. I was in Tenerife when I was on holiday last week. I had 3 guys come up to me when I was there, just messing around. For me, it was messing around, saying, "Oh, I would do that if, or I could do that if it wasn't for my knees, or when you get to
Oh,
my age." I was older than all of them.
yeah.
But the other thing was, what have you done about your knees? What have you done about your back?
Mm,
Guess what?
100%.
I have too. It's not an excuse. Do something with it.
Yeah.
But these guys are using it as a justification for not being in the position to do that.
Yeah. I've
Rather,
got no ACL in my left knee, and I haven't had since 2004. So I've gone longer in my life with no ACL in the knee than what I had an ACL there beforehand, which is a frightening thing to say. But I've had to work specifically to get that leg to the point where the leg can do the things I want to do. If I want to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it holds up in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The calisthenics workouts that I do, I can run, I surf, I jump on a skateboard, ride a skateboard. I've had to make sure that I've put the effort in to give the leg the strength and functionality necessary to compensate for the fact that the ACL isn't there.
there are two guys that I'm aware of on that I follow on Instagram. One is a black belt in jiu-jitsu with no ACL. And he's documented his journey, and he specifically talks about, look, still possible, no ACL.
Yeah, yeah.
Other guy I follow had no ACL and had an artificial ACL put in, and it was his return journey. And over 12 weeks, he documented returning back to squatting 2 times body weight. So these things are possible. There's another guy, Dr. Andreo Spina, and he documented about an ACL rupture and repair, how he went from zero to walking back to full-on
Mm,
training. He comes from a BJJ background as well, and that was fascinating watching his journey. But unfortunately, most guys aren't prepared to do the work
yeah.
because it doesn't happen in a few weeks or a few months.
It takes a long time. I had knee surgery again in June 2023, was it? Yes, it was 2023. Where they went in to get me ready for another ACL replacement because I've eventually got to that point. But they've gone in and taken out all the metal work that was there from my previous failed graft back in 2004, and then did some bone grafting to get it ready for the replacement when I eventually get back on the list in the future. Um, so the leg atrophied because you can't train on it for several months, and you slowly have to reintroduce movement and all the usual stuff. But it takes a long time. It took almost a year to get the leg back to full strength, full function. And now it's fine. Like now you can't tell that I had the surgery. Like I can do all my workouts again. Like it functions. I can jump on a surf skate. I can jump on a surfboard, and I can trust the knee to do everything it needs to do, even through the twisting and the pivoting and everything that's involved. But it took a lot of foundational work to get there.
You mentioned something really interesting that we don't talk about enough, and that was muscular atrophy. Um, Injury or not doing something leads to atrophy very, very quickly, particularly as we get older. And it's not something I really noticed until my late 40s. And I can give you an example. So a year ago this month, I had developed 3 symptomatic disc bulges in my neck. They must have been asymptomatic for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
But I was sitting in my chair and I was reading, and all of a sudden I developed a huge amount of nerve pain from my thoracic spine into my armpit, elbow, and then into the hand. Woke up next day and I had a partial paralysis. So I'd lost the strength in these 2 fingers. There was no movement at all, no control. And I couldn't pick up a mug with my thumb, forefinger, and middle finger. It was literally full straight through. It's like, oh shit, bulging disc, radial nerve. I'll need to go and see an osteopath because this, if I get the diagnosis wrong, I can seriously screw up my rehab, but it also determines my
Yeah.
course of outcome and approach for rehab. I went back and she confirmed 3 bulging discs. Anyway, went back, follow up 2 weeks later, and she was amazed at the progress I'd made. She said, look, the pain that you're in, I was on the verge of sending you to A&E for a nerve block. We just don't see this kind of recovery. And I told her what I'd been doing. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of hard work. A year on, I have full strength back in the hand, but this has been daily work.
Yeah.
Yes. I lost very, very quickly the ability. Obviously, we couldn't do a one-handed chin up on this hand, but because I was focused solely on rehab, I lost the ability on the right to do a one-handed pull up. I'm only now a year on getting back to doing a one-handed chin up. Okay. But I've lost 5 centimeters in circumference of the tricep on this arm. And the age that I'm at now, whilst I can flex it in training, my ability, because of the long-term nerve damage here, putting my hand on the table, I can't flex that tricep involuntary.
Okay.
I can flex it voluntarily, but it's the involuntary actions throughout the day. So 5 centimeters loss of muscle on the tricep, I'm at the age where I probably won't get that back. Yes. Now, it's easy to say, well, it's okay for you. It's been a huge amount of frustration, a huge amount of work, some setbacks. Are people prepared to do that? I don't think they are. They just kind of accept it. But neck felt like glass, and I didn't like that feeling. You know, it's like, I don't want to be a victim here. But it's the same approach I've taken with all of the injuries that I've had. And it takes time. I still see this as a continuing journey. I have a good mate of mine is a physio. He's a very good physio, but he gets frustrated in the fact that he treats people and he does hands-on work and he does strength work with them, gives them prescribes some exercises, but compliance with those exercises is almost non-existent. If you work with a professional athlete who gets injured, they're probably doing rehab every day, hours on end. Whereas you and I might go to see a physio once a fortnight and they're thinking this is going to be 12 weeks. After 2 visits, you go, oh, I'm not seeing the results. I'm not going back.
Yeah. No, people need to appreciate that it's monotonous daily work necessary to build the foundation.
A long time. I had meniscus surgery early 30s on. I've had both knees done, but the first one got the sign off from the surgeon at 6 weeks as a follow-up. But for me to recover the range that I knew I should have, that was 2 years worth of work. Say work, not just 2 years of doing nothing and hoping it will come back. That was 2 years for the ability to build up a deep squat and to be able to jump from that position.
That was actually, that's a lesson that I learned in my teens. I was 18 when I ruptured my ACL the first time playing rugby. Had it replaced with a graft they took out of my hamstring. That's something I'll never fall for again, because this hamstring has never been the same. But at that point in my life, I'd always just played sport. And like I said earlier, I never trained dedicated training for a sport. It was just play.
Given you've made it this far into the episode, I can only assume that human metabolic health is a subject you find fascinating and engaging, and it resonates with you. And that's absolutely awesome, because we're very much alike in that regard. And because of that, I want to take a moment to talk to you about potentially becoming a Zinzino independent partner in the same way that I have. You see, Zinzino have tremendous opportunities available for independent partners, meaning people who decide that they don't just want to be a customer, but instead want to use the concept of test-based personalized nutrition to benefit their own health, to take the guesswork out of their own health journeys in the same way that I have, but then to build that user story, to build that testimony of the difference that that's made in our health journeys, and use that to market Zinzino's product, to market the concept of test-based personalized nutrition in the exact way that I'm busy doing right now, and bring on board other customers and other partners to grow the distribution network. And in doing so, you get handsomely rewarded through their compensation scheme, which is one of the best that I've seen in the industry. So if you'd like to explore setting up a side revenue, whether it be something that you only do a couple hours a week or something that you put a little bit more effort into and build into a full-fledged career, or anything in between, get in touch and let's have a talk about the opportunity and how this might be the right fit for you, not only to take the guesswork out of your personal health journey, but to also build you additional income streams that help to improve your financial situation and the possibilities for you and your family.
And I approached the rehab in much the same way. I wasn't allowed to play, so I didn't do anything, and I ballooned and I got fat. And then when I was allowed to return back to play, I played. I went surfing and I did all the things that I enjoyed doing, but I never did any dedicated rehab on the leg. I didn't do any of the boring stuff because I'd never had to do any of the boring stuff in my life before. And a year later, in 2004, I re-ruptured the same knee. And I remember how devastating that news was. Sat on the surgeon's table, having it confirmed that they'd gone in, endoscopy, had a look, and be like, "Yeah, no, you've ruptured that again. You need to have it replaced again." And it dawned on me there. I didn't rehab the leg. Like everything had just come naturally at that up to that point in my life. I hadn't had to put in any dedicated effort. But since then, I've treated it like, no, this takes effort. This takes real concerted effort to rebuild and give that foundation so that it'll do the things I want it to do.
Yeah. I think the other problem we have with rehab is it's not just a physical thing. There's very much mental as
Yeah.
well. I'm very acutely aware from personal experience that, bearing in mind I come from a non-contact sport, the injuries that I've had and the consequences that I live with of those now, is some of which are very severe. But it's depressing. And when we feel shit about something, what are we going to do? We console ourselves in food and drink to try and chasing that emotional feel better response. And it might be the cake, it might be the ice cream, the pizza, whatever it might be. So, or some people might turn to alcohol in that rehab.
That's what I did.
Whilst we can't speed up recovery, you can optimize the processes, get all of your ducks lined up to make sure you're doing everything that you can, but you can slow that recovery down. So definitely we need a physical input, but your nutrition is equally important. Your sleep is super important because the tissues need to recover. Yes. Yeah. We also need to be active to promote good blood flow throughout the body, throughout the day. And we forget about this. We just think, I'll outsource it to a physio. They're crap, it doesn't work because 90% of the rehab process is down to me.
It's
and
for me to do. Yeah.
It's not my fault. It's a crap physio. Actually, highly trained professional over there. I've not taken their advice, but I've also not done my end of the bargain. You know, and which rehab effectively is just another form of strength training. Ultimately, I'm not a physio, don't pretend to be, but it is another form of strength training. And come into the gym, you can squat 40 kilos. You're not going to squat 200 overnight. Some people might do that if you're young in 6 months. Others, it could be a 2-year journey. We need to take a longer term approach. And we come to middle age, we're not rehabbing, we're not addressing restrictions. If you don't do that now, that's going to be a tough latter third of your life.
Yeah, no, for sure. It keeps coming back to lifestyle. You have to build a lifestyle which prioritizes these things, which can maintain them and have as high a possible health span across the remainder of your lifespan.
Yes. And again, I think there's this false delusion of, well, I have a high quality of life. I liken that to a bit like before you learn to drive and you get your driving license, you probably scrounged lift to see your mates go out off mum and dad and to get up, maybe use the buses or the trains, what have you. You pass your driving test, get your license, get your first car, and all of a sudden it opens up a whole new world of opportunities that you never knew existed. I can now look for a job outside of town. I can go to a club in another city on a Friday night. I can date somebody on the other side of the country.
Yeah.
I can do lots more, and life just becomes richer. And physical capacity does just that. It enriches your life.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm not governed by performance now. It's enriching my life to lead a life uncompromised.
Yeah.
So last year, I was hiking along the Polish-Slovakian border. My wife is Polish. 40 kilometers, undulating terrain, daughter on my shoulders, 10 kilos of water, had 40 kilos. Not something I trained for, not a problem. I climbed up the mountain with her over 18 kilometers on my back as well, not something I trained for. The monkey bars at the park with her on my back, not something I trained for, but it enriches our life because of how I am, in spite of being middle-aged.
Yeah.
Age is not an excuse.
No, 100%. Toby, we could carry on for ages.
Sorry.
And I'll definitely have you back on. But something I like to ask my guests at the end of each episode is if there's one takeaway that you would like the viewers to take with them, that one piece of information that you really want to resonate with them, what would that be for you?
Difficult to narrow it down to health. Down to one thing. I'll try and build it into one for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll start with a quote that I have as my tagline. Aging is inevitable. How you age is a choice. Fitness is not easy. Work with an expert. You need to get an assessment to understand what you need to work on. So get an assessment. Don't assume you're okay.
Yeah.
Leave nothing to chance.
Thank you very much for coming on, sir. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, we'll definitely be having you back on in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Toby. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, Ricky.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching the episode. I hope that you found the conversation meaningful and informative, and I hope that it has empowered you with some tools and insights that you can take to tweak and improve your own lifestyle approach in pursuit of optimal metabolic health outcomes. If you've enjoyed the episode, and if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd like you to do me the kindness of please subscribing to the channel, giving it a like, maybe even giving it a share. Help to raise awareness and get the podcast in front of as many viewers as possible, because it is my passion to try and help as many people as possible to understand more of the nuance around metabolic health and how to tweak their lifestyle in pursuit of optimal outcomes. Also, if you have any constructive feedback, things that you think I could improve on, any critiques, any criticisms, please do feed them back. I give you my solemn word that I will take them seriously, and I will, to the best of my ability, work to improve and to give you a more refined and more targeted product as a result of your feedback. So I will take it seriously, and I'll do what I can to improve the show. But again, thank you very much for watching. Keep thriving.